Hello, everybody. My name is Frances Castanedice, and I am president of the Houston Easton Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also a proud member of the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Board. Thank you for joining us for our 2021 virtual conversations, The State of Houston Hispanic Education Back to School. This program was created by our dear friend Sofia Adrogué, a super attorney and someone who is very passionate about education. She has put on many programs here in the Houston area targeting Hispanic youth, and now you're going to hear from her and others to talk about the important topic of us going back to school, especially during a pandemic. Today would not be possible without our friends at the Houston Media Source. We are here today taping this program, and you can watch it again live on our Facebook page, the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Board, or on this channel. So make sure that you share it with other people and spread the word of this important dialogue that we're going to have. Education, again, is so important, and Sophia is going to announce our panelists, but I wanted to thank our committee. We have some great people that are putting this program together, including Sofia Adrogué, Grace Olivares, Rose Salas, and Lenora Salora Polman. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Sofia. Thanks, Sofia.
Absolutely, and welcome, bienvenidos a todos. And Frances, as always, an honor to have you visit with us, and not only that, introduce us. Of course, thanks to our host, Houston Media Source, and we are ecstatic to be here. Critical conversation. What does our board do very quickly first? The Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Board. It serves as a liaison between the Hispanic community and the mayor. Indeed, this is part of a conversation, part of our virtual conversations initiative. Houston, our beloved city, is the nation's city of the future. As Rice's Dr. Stephen Kleinberg says, it is a prophetic city. Because what does that mean? We are today what the U.S. will look like in 40 years. More than 145 different languages spoken in Houston, and 1 out of every 4 of us are born outside this country. I'm one of them, soy uno de ellos. In 2020, obviously, the global humanitarian challenge of really our lifetime, it had upended all aspects of our life, threatening our physical lives, our economic lives, mental and health well-being, absolutely. We're transitioning into 2021. Unfortunately, we're still not done. We're still faced with the greatest leadership tests of our lifetimes, professionally and personally. Cognizant that we are going to have to live with this new normal, and it's going to be different. Generations, all of us, our kids, our parents, our community, we're all going to be able to say, was it pre-COVID or post-COVID, and address it. And we have a crisis, and with a crisis, though, there's key inflection points and opportunities. We all believe, sitting around this table, and I look forward to introducing our experts, we have to act now to seize the moment of opportunity, to create the new normal. Those of us gathered today, Frances, Christian Navarro, Ramiro Fonseca, and Juliet Stepich, and really with the support of the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Board, know that part of our new normal has to be the lens of education. How do we innovate and reimagine this new normal that we have to do for education? As Rice's Dr. Kleinberg has also said, access to education is in essence the most powerful determinant of obtaining a job today. What we earn depends on what we learned, now more than ever. This is in essence a knowledge-based economy. What does it mean to all of us? It means that as soon as we can, we've got to get ourselves, our children, our friends educated. Doesn't have to be fancy, and we'll talk about opportunities. Just out there thinking, counting, learning, reading as much as possible. Pick up that book, pick up that newspaper, and read and think and dialogue. Schools also need to be places that are focused on the whole child. Juliet Stepich and her role and what she did, that she'll visit with us shortly at the City of Houston as our education czar for so many years. We know that this emphasis needs to be on the entire being, the entire child, mental health, physical well-being. We are trying to achieve equity. It will not be easy. and our population numbers are significant. What are they specifically? There are about 200,000 students in HISD. Approximately 62% of them are Latinos. And what does that really mean? 62% of 200,000? I hope someone back at home is doing the math. We've got 124,000 children and young adults. What does that mean? According to Latinos in Education, it is the entire population of Laredo, Beaumont, or Abilene. 124,000. The effect that we can make through HISD is palpable. This is a critical moment for Latino students, and the decisions we make as we are still battling COVID may be outcome determinative. But I'm gathered with experts, with Christian, with Juliet Ramiro. What is the goal over the next hour? Stay tuned, because I want some proactive ideas, something tangible, something we can all do. We don't all get the luxury of a tutor or something fancy, but what can we do? What can we be doing in the mental health and services state, in redressing the unfinished learning that Latino students face as a result of the pandemic, the digital divide, the technological devices and the computers and reliable broadband, tutoring enrichment activities, and the emphasis and importance on pre-K. I could say so much more, but really the attention needs to be to the experts. I'm honored to have you. Please, as you welcome and say hello, introduce yourselves. Don't be shy. Your expertise in the education arena, and I will pass it to Christian Navarro, fellow attorney. Give us a sense of the importance of education and perhaps also focusing on pre-K. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Christian Navarro, and I am fortunate to be the legacy of a Houston trailblazer, Yolanda Black Navarro. My mother, born in the Houston East End, was a lifelong advocate for education. She talked about the 3 E's: education, empowerment, economic development. But it always began with education. And when should all of our education begin? Frankly, it can't begin early enough. If I were talking to a parent, a guardian of a newborn, I would advocate relentlessly for pre-K, because pre-K is not guaranteed. It just isn't. And so you have to find space available, even at your local, at your neighborhood school. And the closest elementary school for you, HISD does not guarantee pre-K education. There is early childhood development at social services. Fortunately, AMA, founded by my mother, Association for the Advancement of Mexican Americans, has an early childhood development center. But the essential importance of pre-K, it was shared with me also by my wife. She is a kindergarten educator, but began in pre-K development. And the essential part of pre-K development is that there's a social learning aspect that begins. There's an introduction to language and letters. There is also an interaction away from those devices that are introduced maybe too early in our lives. And so I can't advocate enough for parents, guardians, relatives to tell young parents, new parents, begin looking for pre-K enrollment now, because it is an essential part of the trajectory of your child's educational development.
And thank you so much. And one of the things that we'll make sure and do, and I'm going to ask Francis at the end to make sure we know the website is, we will do our best to have specific ideas of websites and phone numbers in the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory, so that as people are looking for pre-K opportunities, and you may as well please share with us. We know that there's a school named after your mother.
She will strike me down for forgetting to
That's
do that.
okay. That's okay. We're a team. Please, the name of the school.
You did it for her, Yolanda Black Navarro Middle School of Excellence.
Absolutely. Middle School of Excellence, and absolutely. Well, and I will say this. I think what's also important as we turn it to Juliet, there's so much guidance you can give us, but if for whatever reason it is now, you're not going to have the luxury now, this semester, to do pre-K, just do whatever you can do to keep your child interested and involved, as simple as creating your own flashcards, right? Your own numbers or reading, just anything you can do. And as much socialization as possible, given everything that we're addressing. And we appreciate the complexity of it all. And also the fact, and I know you'll discuss this when you talk about the mental health ramifications, that we also want to make sure that the parents know this and the students know this. And we talked about this when we did mental health and wellness with Dr. Lopez. As she brilliantly said, it's okay not to be okay, but let's do something about it. Juliet, tell us a little bit about your former big titles within the city on education and everything you continue to advocate for.
Well, thank you very much. And I knew your mother, and she was a blessing to Houston. And my goodness, what a fierce advocate for education in the community. So, you know, I had the blessing and the privilege to be able to serve as the mayor's first director of education for the city of Houston. And I had previously served on the Houston Independent School District Board of Education for 5 years. And during that time, I just looked at the picture of saying, what can we do to enhance educational empowerment and opportunity in the city of Houston? And when I was able to join the city as the mayor's director, looking at ways of increasing collaboration, coordination, and communication. From day one, we started realizing that we could do better if we worked together. There are tremendous amounts of resources that come from various school districts, but nonprofit agencies and entities, other governmental entities, as well as one of the largest medical center in the world. How can we work together to make every child have the supports and benefits that they need to succeed? So enhancing the opportunities of getting a diverse array of partners to sit down, break bread, and work on the issues together. And my goodness, did we have a lot of issues. Tax Day flood, Memorial Day flood, Hurricane Harvey. Those crises led us to opportunities to say we've got to break down these structural barriers to address issues of inequity, but bringing forth the value of partnering together. And then, as we felt like we were developing programs that were assisting, COVID-19. And in that brought to our forefront something that had never been seen, an impact on public education that was so dramatic. I can't imagine anything that was as powerfully impactful on the lives of our community and especially our school system as COVID-19. And it addressed an issue that we've been talking about for many years. In HISD, back in 2013 and 14, we started the Power Up program, trying to do one-to-one computing for high school students. We said over time we would transition to middle school and elementary. But with budget cuts, that was stalled. COVID-19 happened. There was a significant need for hardware, meaning the actual laptops or computers. But then there was also the need for connectivity. Not just basic low-speed internet, high-speed internet that was going to allow students to have access to a conversation with their teacher, to be able to see enriched videos and curriculum, to be able to learn at home, to be able to provide resources and supports for the parents to be able to find out where they could get food, medicine, COVID-19 testing, and information that was critical to their survival, health, and well-being. So we started looking at a way of bringing together the resources, the persons, and the partners, and the places and spaces that we had already navigated through several storms, literally and figuratively. And by bringing together that diverse array of partners, we started working with the state on Operation Connectivity. And so there are still many challenges that exist today, but thankful for federal, state, and local leadership of prioritizing the need of investing dollars into actually getting laptops, internet access, as well as the development of a curriculum that's online, that's enriched, but also professional development for the teachers and instructors. So you look at the community, the cumulative level of stress, distress, trauma. You look at us trying to bridge the digital divide, but you look at a computer no longer as just a portal and access to information. It's a lifesaver. It's an access portal to the world. And so children were faced with remaining at home, being away from their friends, and even prior to the storm of COVID and Harvey, many of our children in the community suffer from stress, distress, and trauma that requires support, mental health services, many of which are not readily available. So that was another area that we started looking at even prior to COVID. The Mayor's Office of Education worked with Baylor College of Medicine and other medical partners to design the Be Well, Be Connected program. And we also worked with the Texas Children's Hospital TAG Center, or the Trauma and Grief Center, to be able to provide access and resources that are very hard to find. Another thing that those computers can bring about is the opportunity for someone to have a virtual mental health opportunity for counseling or resources with a psychiatrist. So the computer is now a portal to education, health, food and nutrition, so many other resources that require us, if we want to truly live in a transformative economy where all people and we have a level playing field, we've got to make sure that we have access to equitable technology and bridge that digital divide.
You said so much, and I'm going to come back. I'm taking copious notes, so hold many of those brilliant thoughts. But I want to pivot for a moment and introduce Ramiro Fonseca. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and all the great work that you previously did within the education realm.
Thank you, Sophia, and to the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Board, thank you for this opportunity. This is just, I was really happy to receive the call to participate in this conversation. So, Christian, I too was very privileged to know your mom, Yolanda Black Navarro, and working with the organization that she co-founded, AMA. I've worked very closely with them, so I know the organization very well and the services that they offer to the community. And then digital divide. Gosh, the work that I've done over the last several years, including my former employer, Project Grad, we did college career advising, addressing the guidance that so many students and families lack support in getting them to reach their college and career dreams. But not only, when you hear college career, or rather college university, you think of that 4-year university, those institutions that many of our students in particular are really not interested in, or they're not aspiring to go to a 4-year university.
I just think of the dollar sign,
right?
How inordinately expensive.
Very expensive.
I think there's a lot of interest, but it's just,
yeah,
it's a lot of money, and not everyone has that luxury.
Yeah.
Most don't.
So the organizations that I've worked with over the years, and most recently Project Grad, students would come in and say, I don't want to go to a university, but there are programs, there are educational programs, free in many instances, that are offered through the nonprofit organizations here in the greater Houston area. And we're so fortunate to have so many companies that are very supportive, grant funding, that make it possible for students to access these workforce training programs, certifications that will get them high-paying, high-demand jobs. And in particular here in the Gulf Coast area, we're so fortunate to be so close to the port, a number of careers, good-paying jobs in transportation, logistics, maritime. And then, of course, we have the medical center that offer great opportunities in health careers as well, technology. So one of the things that over the pandemic that we've really learned is going back to the digital divide, or how this has helped us, or it's been a positive, through the efforts of the organization that I was with. We had workshops. Usually if we offered these workshops, they had to travel to a site to attend and receive the information. This allowed us to reach much further. We had students that were coming from across the county, from outside the county. So that was a plus. We were able to reach and help students. It was a broader outreach. And then the other thing that I do want to add, contrary to what many individuals think or say, oftentimes I would hear, oh, parents don't care about their child's education. They sure do. Many times parents just need to connect with individuals, with organizations that can communicate and take the time to speak to them in their language. Many of our students with non-English speaking parents, they want to be involved, but they just need to connect with the right organizations to educate them on the process so that they can be there to support their child in getting there. Christian, you mentioned, pre-K and early childhood education. That's where we really, really need to invest our time, our dollars, because if that's not established at the beginning, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get that child, once they get into high school. So, but yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm so glad.
I apologize. No, absolutely. And you touched upon so many amazing things. I want to make some anecdotes and then really start a dialogue. One of the things you said is so accurate. It is absolutely not correct that parents and we in the Hispanic community are not interested and engaged. As a matter of fact, the Rice University study, he says every year the percentage of Hispanics that also appreciate of the import of education and the correlation between economic success and a better job is over 70%. So we absolutely get it. And I think most people do. The reality though is you may get it, but we're trying to survive. You've got often maybe a mom, maybe a dad, maybe just a single parent situation, trying to do the best they can, working slightly above minimum wage and doing what they can for their family. And particularly times as we've had through COVID. And thinking aloud before I ask some specific questions, for instance, I'm an immigrant. When I first came to the United States, it was a situation where I needed to learn to speak English. So I enrolled in the library, the public library, had a weekly reading contest. And I just enrolled and I won every single week for about a year. That's what happened. That's why I started knowing some things. And it's basic. And the reality is we can all do it. Yes. And at first it was hard because English is not my first language, which really brings an important note that you made about the language issue and the importance. And maybe I will go back to Christian. You said some very powerful things. And I want to discuss your mom as well. But before that, Juliet, perhaps a little bit about what you saw as a board member and then as the head of our educational endeavors for the city on the English as a second language. Those are very important programs as I appreciate them, but you're the expert. But as with everything, it's important ideally to not forget your Spanish, right? But also along the way, do your best to pick up English, so be able to ideally have the luxury of both. Yes. Nunca te olvidas que hablas castellano, español, lo que sea. Pero también, si es posible, pick up the English language. Right. Tell us a little bit about what you saw in the ESL program and maybe some ideas within that.
Well, I remember when I was on the school board, I can't remember the number. Yes. But the number of languages that children speak within HISD, dozens and dozens.
It has to be astronomical given there's 145 languages spoken in the city.
I think it's like 84 that are taught. I mean, it was a dramatic number.
What a country.
Oh, what a country. And you would visit a school like Las Americas, a middle school, beautiful newcomer school, but children that were fleeing violence and civil war that were coming to this country to be in a safe environment where they could learn and they would be provided wraparound services and supports, access to mental health and different things along those lines. But it's critical to have a strong program that allows the English language learners to successfully transition in time, and not to allow them to stay in a program where they don't have access to all these other services. Now, the other question is to be able to allow the child to benefit in speaking 2 languages, 3 languages, 4 languages. The importance in brain development and the opportunity to be able to communicate with the world is so critical.
Well, and the importance really from the 0 to 6 years old, right?
Absolutely.
At the time in which we can be sponges, but we've got to be given the material to be those sponges, right?
And it's critical with brain research and development that a child can become absolutely fluent in more than one language, and it's extraordinarily beneficial for other areas of academic progress and performance. And so the thing is, ELL learners or English language learners are some of the most vulnerable students. At the middle school level, you start seeing a significant amount of drop-off. At the high school level, it's even larger. And so what we would see in years and performances and evaluations, some of the highest levels of dropouts were from young people that were not successful in this transition, not being given an opportunity to learn in a rich, robust environment, and not being able to go into those other enriched courses beyond these, kind of framed English language type classes. So we looked and said, we want to transition to bilingual dual language education. It's more expensive, it's harder to get all the teachers, but it's something that's way more valuable. And it's something that will allow a child to be able to succeed in 2 languages.
Well, and your point there is well taken. Also the aspect, and I want to turn it to Christian, but the importance of assimilation. In all aspects of what we do, it's important to be able to do something a little different, and perhaps you have an amazing first native language. But at the end of the day, there is a commonality among all of us. And if English is the primary language, at some point, ideally, people assimilate, but never losing. I mean, I was just so inordinately proud and happy that my parents always ensured we kept speaking Spanish at home so that was never lost. And that was important. Adrogué has always been my name and always will be. However, we appreciate the fact that we're in the United States. Well, Christian, I have to also say, I knew Yolanda too, because I'm feeling like a little bit of lack of assimilation. I'm feeling a little bit like an outsider. And not only that, I would see, one of the things I did with a dear friend, Caroline Baker, through Leadership Houston and others at Rice University, is that we would have these youth leadership summits where the whole issue was to engage, inspire, and educate. And your mom was right there. What I would ask Christian is, aware that there may not be an opportunity for everyone in the pre-K, what ideas do you have for parents right now and students, particularly also during this precarious time of COVID? We're not sure exactly what's going to happen. Obviously, we were all masked up walking in here, and we are all needing to adhere. But what are some of the tangible things? What is something that Yolanda would tell parents right now if she could gather and say, okay, podés hacer estas cosas. This is what you can do. You don't need to, even if for whatever reason you can't get your child into pre-K. My child is 4 years old. Christian, ¿qué puedo hacer con mi hijo, mi hija?
Don't wait.
Don't wait, but if
Don't wait.
How about if for whatever reason you can't get in?
You can't get in. Well, then visit the school still. All schools, I believe, now have wraparound service specialists. And wraparound service specialists is want to identify the need of the community surrounding that school. And though they may not be able to educate your child because of his or her age level, but they soon will. And they want that student to attend their school eventually. And they want that child to attend their school because of a myriad of reasons. There's competition for enrollment. We all know that.
I love to hear that. I want to hear that there's competition.
There's competition for enrollment, but that competition for enrollment leads to that school seeking to provide services for the entire community that surrounds it. So visit that school if you can. Visit in person. You can. But also, if you have the capacity or the availability or the digital divide is not separating you, then try to visit HISD. Website right now. There is a number of resources available there. It can be overwhelming, it certainly can, but that's where you can begin. But then also visit the spiritual center that you go to if you go to one. Talk to your comadres, your compadres. Talk to them and visit, what can I do? Do not take this alone. It was always about the community with my mother. That's what I learned from her. And so it's education and it's empowerment. And how do you get the empowerment? You get the empowerment by speaking up, by seeking, hey, I need help.
Well, and I have to tell you, and pardon interrupting, I love the fact that we don't do it alone. I mean, think about what we saw during the pandemic. All these pods gathering, a fancy term of people going together. The kids couldn't go to school, so a group gathered and to make sure someone was watching to make sure that they were tuned in. So that's exactly right. La comunidad te puede ayudar. And again, it doesn't have to be something perfect, but just actively engage, because also the fact that your kids are also watching and the parents are working together with the students. I want to Ramiro, and then I want to turn it back, turn it to you, Juliet. One of the things that's just listening to, obviously, aware that you were more focused at college age. But I think the lesson is important, which is the importance of lifelong learning. And it doesn't need to be, whether it's, ideally it can be free, but through HCC or Lone Star and a litany of other things. But just to continue to stay engaged, learn and think. I've been a lawyer now for almost 30 years, but at the age of 40, I went back to school because I felt that there was something more that I could gain. And the truth be told, if I didn't have to work for a living, my kids are going to expensive schools and want to go to expensive postgraduate schools. The reality is that I would also consider just getting a doctorate just to continue. But you can just do it yourself in the evenings, whether it's reading, whether it's on the computer. Some of the things I would say is extrapolating a little bit of what you saw that someone that can do that may not have the opportunity economically or otherwise for college. What can you tell maybe some of the high schoolers? What are some of the things that they can be thinking? Because then I'm going to turn it to Juliet to help me a little bit with the youngers. But what advice would you give someone in high school? Knowing what's ahead, knowing how expensive a traditional college education may be. But what can they do in high school? Why should they stay in high school? What's the importance of continuing, even if it's painful or not fun? Masking, combination, hybrid. Why stay there, Ramiro?
Yeah, that high school diploma, that is gold. You've got to have that at minimum. Of course, if you don't get there, then it becomes a little bit more difficult. When you want to find a job, they're going to ask for that high school diploma or the GED. But if you're in high school, stick it out. You've got to get that high school diploma. For those of you out there that don't have that diploma, then of course there's that GED. But, job, they're going to ask one or the other. The one thing too, before I forget, something that Christian touched on, there's a community out there, there's people, there's individuals, there's organizations that want to help. So don't feel like there's no one out there to help. Oftentimes for the high school students, if they go to the counselor, sometimes they may be overwhelmed because of the number of students they're already serving, and maybe they can't give them more than the 5 or 10 minutes or to point them to that terminal over there, that computer, to do the work. Again, there's organizations out there that are ready to help.
Okay, can you give me some names? We've heard
Sure.
Ama, and if you call Ama, I think you say Christian or Sophia's name.
Yeah.
They're going to love us.
Well, certainly, to start off with AMA, they offer adult education programs. And then, of course, high school students, if they've graduated and they've made the decision to take on a job, and maybe 6 months, 9 months into the job, they figured this is a dead-end place. I should have listened to that counselor. I should have listened to Ramiro in that program about,
that high
pursuing.
School is gold.
That's right.
I mean, I love that.
High school diploma is gold.
Yes.
But yeah, they have adult programs. Organizations like Project Grad, the Grad Cafe, which is now under the Tejano Centers here in Houston. They have advisors there. You can contact them going to their website, gradcafe.org. I still remember that. And schedule your virtual appointment.
So grad, GRADCAFE.
.org.
.org.
That's right. You can schedule your
Do I
virtual
get a cafe if I go?
They do have coffee.
I hope so.
But yeah, so under the Tejano Centers, thank God for Dr. Adriana Tamez with her
Yeah.
leadership
Absolutely.
that she made that happen. So, leaders like that know the communities and they know the needs. And but individuals at Grad Cafe, they know that not every student aspires to go to college, to a
But
two-year.
then what's important is you don't need to. I mean, you do what you can do
Right.
at the time. Just continue learning and growing, right?
Yeah. And like you said, continuing that learning experience. I got my master's degree at the age of over 50.
Of
and,
course. And don't get me wrong, I need to be clear.
yeah.
I don't want to be known as having said you don't need to go to college.
No.
I'm just advocating, just continue learning. There may be barriers that make you wait longer, but that's okay as long as you keep on keeping on.
And you have to be ready for it.
And you have to be
right,
ready.
That's something that you need, and you have to be ready for it. But yeah, bottom line is, like, there's a network of individuals out
So
there.
you talked about Tejano Center.
There's Tejano
How
Grad
about
Cafe.
Yes.
There's SER
Exactly.
as well.
I was about to ask
Yeah.
about SER.
SER
Yes.
has some excellent
SER.
SER,
Yes.
SER jobs, yes. And so they have job skills training programs.
Yes.
You know, I think I saw they have customer service banking. They have a number of careers out there, you know, for individuals of all ages, adults, adult learners. And then, of course, you have the LULAC National Education Service Centers. They also provide college and career readiness support to families and students.
And LULAC is LULAC.
Right.
Yes.
LULAC National Education Service Center. So again, my longtime friend under the leadership of Roseanne Blanco there.
She's
but these are just a few organizations that offer guidance, advising, and then of course the organizations that we mentioned, AMA, SER, are just a few that actually offer the workforce training.
And you know what's going to happen? When we're done, you're getting an email from me at worst case tomorrow saying, okay, give us those websites, please, because we do want to put them on the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory.
Yes.
So people have the opportunity to look and to contemplate what can be done. Juliet, give us within the same the same genre, but give us a sense from some of the younger, if you are a mom or a dad of someone maybe past pre-K, but maybe even middle school, or just get a little bit past getting started. What are some of the things to focus on?
Well, you know, in terms of resources and supports that are available for families, one thing that I just have a tremendous amount of joy and exuberance over is something that came from Dr. Ron Ferguson in Harvard. He worked with the Houston Health Department, also a partner with the Houston Children's Museum, and it's called the Houston Basics. And you can visit www.thebasicshouston.org, and it's a very
Could you say that again? I'm embarrassed to say I don't even know about this.
Yes. So
say it again.
It's www.thebasicshouston.org. 5 simple steps that parents can work with their baby. 1, maximize love, manage stress. 2, talk, sing, and point. 3, count, group, and compare. 4, explore through movement and play. 5, read and discuss stories. Now, you go to this website, they've got videos, it's translated in multiple different languages. There are many different foundations that have invested in this, from the Rupani Foundation to the Powell Foundation to the Christus St. Elizabeth, or the Christus Foundation, I can't remember the full name of it, but these groups have come together to create a program that's simple, accessible, easy to understand. You can download some of the stuff on your telephone. It's readily and easily available. Fantastic program. Right?
Well, and let me say also, so parents don't feel stressed. One of the favorite things, you know, I ever heard, I remember at one point I was, you know, we're working full time, trying to raise children, et cetera, and I was feeling like there are days I barely saw my child during waking hours and et cetera. I'm not reading enough. I'm not doing this. And you know, one day I remember my mom saying to me, "Don't worry, Sophie, I had 5 children under the age of 10 at one time. I'm not sure I ever read to you. And I worked out okay." So the point is, it is okay. You do what you can do. And I think that's one of the powerful messages.
Oh, absolutely.
If the best thing you can do is a great hug, that great hug is fantastic.
Yes.
And just as long as you take a moment, whenever that may be. How many times have I said to my kids, you know what? I know that you want to eat dinner, but power snack until I can get there. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Sometimes it's just we're getting a loaf of bread and some cheese and whatever it is, just sitting and talking.
The Basics Houston talks about exactly what you've just described.
And being at a dinner table, but it doesn't have to be a fancy dinner table. It can be sitting outside with a napkin, just sitting there. Sometimes it's just cereal. It doesn't matter. But sitting there, getting the chance to talk and say things like, I used to love to play the game. Okay, some call it the rose, and I guess it's the thorn and the rose.
Rose and bud, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was just the good, bad, and ugly. I was a lot more to the bottom line. That won't surprise you guys. It was like, okay, what went right? What didn't go right? And what's a moment and just the discussion. Say those 5 things again. Maybe I need to go back to my children. What did I miss? Say them again.
So it's like maximize love and manage stress.
Yes.
Okay. Talk, sing, and point.
Yes. And some of us should not be singing. I should not be singing to my child.
You
Go ahead.
should. You should. And then the third is count, group, and compare. The fourth is explore through movement and play. And the fifth is read and discuss stories. And so the basics, Houston, is saying take time to show love and devotion. Be conscientious. A child, sometimes, we hear people say it's better for children to be seen and not heard. That is not true. It is good for you to interact with a child that you see, learn, play, let them talk, interact. Show them, if you have a book, even if it's a broken, tattered book, read it over and over again. Growing up as a child, I was so blessed to have a father that just loved books and reading, and the whole world is opened up when you have that opportunity to have a book, right? And so they say at some point you have to learn how to read, and then you read. You have to learn how to read, and then you read to learn.
Well, let's talk about also who among us on the public library. Does anyone else feel like they have some? Juliet, can you talk about the public library?
Well, Ramiro, you know a significant amount of. There's a lot of interaction in terms of the
can you guys
public
both
library.
talk about that and the opportunities there?
One thing I want to say is go
Please.
to www.houstonlibrary.org. During the time that I was at the city, I saw they have expanded linked learning. They have the opportunity.
So what is expanded linked
So
learning?
it's like this opportunity for your library card to give you this access to both digital resources, to be able to check out a book. You also have the opportunity.
Even if you don't have a library card, can you get one?
So you go and you should try to get a library card. That's your access portal. You need the library card. But the great thing is with this, they have a MOU and a relationship with HISD and other school districts to allow a student's ID card and their
That's a
and
memorandum of understanding for most of
I'm
us
sorry.
mere mortals. Okay? She's not
memorandum.
going into abbreviation. You're above my pay grade. Okay?
I apologize.
Come on, let's go down.
Well, it was
MOU.
It was trying to make sure that kids in schools could have access to the Houston Public Library's resources and that it wouldn't be hard for them to get a library card. And so the nice thing is the Houston Public Library also allows you to pick up a
I think they're called
hotspot.
power cards at some
Yeah,
point.
you can get like a computer. You can check out a computer. You can check out a hotspot, a Verizon Jetpack. These things are invaluable. They're digital books, podcasts, videos, Cafe College used to be there, lynda.com, like tutorial sessions that are available online. They even have workforce development access portals so you can figure out what careers you might be interested in. And these are amazing. They even have a Houston Public Library YouTube channel.
Okay, so by the way, when you're going to give me all these, you're not going to just give me the library. You're going to go down and give me some extra websites.
Absolutely.
Okay. Be prepared. That's unbelievable. I want to go back to school. I just want to go hang out at a library.
Yeah.
That's and whether physically or obviously online. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, the introduction to the library. Now, I have to add that today I work for Council Member Carla Cisneros.
Yes.
She's a former teacher, so this was a perfect match. Education here, education there, all the way. Today I looked through every council member's websites on the HoustonTex.gov site, and it is amazing. Her resources, she has resources for seniors, but she also has, for every age group, but there is this section on education. There you can find links to the various organizations that we've been talking about.
Okay, so you know what? You're going to have to give me all of that.
Yeah, so the Houston Public Library, the business link. I just learned of all the different workshops that prepare young adults to learn interviewing skills, preparing resumes, marketing themselves and on social media, the LinkedIn, setting up their LinkedIn profile. So they have all these workshops available through that business link, connecting through the library.
Well, and actually, I'm sorry you said that. It made me think of I've got to do a plug. The former president of Cristo Rey Jesuit, it was Father TJ, of course, beloved. Paul Pasoli started something called Career Spring. And if you get through the luxury of going to high school and then are contemplating college, etc., and you need a little extra assistance on interviews and everything, Career Spring is an option as well. But I think the important part of this conversation, I want to turn it to Christian for a moment, is that it's not only is it not shameful, Well, let me back up. It's shameful if you don't ask because all of us need help. The reality is we are all needing a compadre, a comadre. We all are a community of learners. And it's best, and quite frankly, it is actually, I remember vividly, this is just a funny anecdote. I was always the last one to finish my law school exams. I think people felt sorry for me. I mean, I was the very last one. The professor was extricating the paper from me, and I did just fine. But the reality is, I just wanted to double, triple check, and that is okay. So use the resources. Be the nerd, with the notebook. I have my notebook with my plastic sheets everywhere. Be that nerd. What I want to do, Christian, I'm going to turn it to you, unfortunately, because I'm having so much fun discussing what to me is outcome determinative. I will say as I pass it to all of us, to Christian first and then to all of us to say some remarks. We've got about 10 minutes, a little less, is, at least in my life experience, the point of differentiation for me has been the opportunity to have an inordinate amount of amazing education in this country. Oh, yeah. And because I was super nerdy and read all the time, I had the chance to go to college and law school for free. Yeah. And that's a distinction with a huge difference. So my advocacy from one nerd, and I'm a proud nerd, geek nerd, whatever the right term is today, I am one. So invest in that education. Christian, let me turn it to you to say whatever we have failed to say that Yolanda would say, por favor, decí eso. And then some closing remarks as we then pivot back.
Well, I would say Houston Community College.
Yes.
That's one thing that we have not brought up. Houston Community College provides a lot of resources and a starting point for those who maybe had a stopping point too early in their life. Yes. And so it's there is a certification programs there. There are a wealth of resources there. And they also provided an honorary degree to my mother. Although she's a proud University of Houston graduate, took her 8 years, she didn't stop. Right? So don't stop. Keep going. And if you have stopped, start again.
Okay, let's talk about that. 8 years, but she persevered, and look at everything else she did. 8 years, not only did she get through, she has a school named after her, she has a park named after her, successful child who went through law school, etc. That's a great story of persistence and perspiration, but with a passion. And obviously that passion for education. And you're so right about HCC.
And I'll end with this. She introduced me to all of y'all and to a greater community, a wonderful community, this large community. And so it's a privilege to be here, and it's been a really engaging opportunity for me. And I just hope that our audience can benefit from this conversation that we have expressed and shared today.
Thank you. And you know what? As I turn it to Juliet, the other aspect is also the fact that we were introduced to each other, but that we're not at anything alone. That's what's important. These are really tough times. Yes. We thought we were done with the mask. We thought we were done with a lot of these things, and we're not. Many of us are facing losing our homes. We've lost loved ones during this time. Just prior to beginning, we were talking about our dear friend who had their partner of life pass away. It is an incredibly difficult time. And I think what's also important, and perhaps Juliet, you can cover that too, there has to be hotlines and phone numbers that we can call, because 211, I think, is one of them. Whether, there are numbers to call, because the reality is you shouldn't suffer alone. And even all of us, every single one of us, have these moments that you think, what the heck? This is hard and I need help.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, I know that as a trustee on the school board, I thought I knew. I was like, largest school district in the state of Texas, 7th largest in the country. My goodness. I get to the city and I meet all these people that I had never met before. Folks from nonprofits that wanted to help. And I started thinking, how is it that someone that's engaged at this level doesn't know about all this wonderful stuff happening here? And so community is taking all of the dynamic critical components in a community and braiding them together, weaving together a fabric that can provide a safety, secure, net for families. And so looking at the various resources, while I was working in the Mayor's Office of Education, we talked about creating a clearinghouse of these resources. So if you go and visit the City of Houston, the Mayor's Office of Education page, there are a lot of resources that are available there, from things from scholarships, educational opportunities, but we also have information there about Be Well, Be Connected. There's a program called OUT, the number 2, Learn, HOU.org, which is a resource of
Could you
different...
say that again?
Out to Learn is a program. It's OUT, the number 2, Learn, HOU.org, a rich collaborative of folks that offer low-cost, no-cost, out-of-school, after-school resources. And so those are different types of programs. We had the Higher Houston Youth Program that would employ students. We were transitioning from just being a summer program to a year-round program. There was the Cities Connecting Children to Nature program, talking about the importance of environmentalism, greening of neighborhoods. There are many different...
And just plain being outside.
And just being outside, right? And so you look at these various programs and resources, they're available. Visit the Mayor's Office of Education page. It's www.houstontx.gov/education, and you can find those resources.
And that's a
there.
mouthful, but do not worry. I promise you guys, get you guys gender neutral, men and women, boys and girls, as you are. The reality is we will make sure that we will get them up. Give us a little bit of time into next week, but we will try to give you a tremendous number. You know what, I have to confess, I was going to go back to my reading the dictionary days and say a myriad, a cornucopia, a plethora, if you will. Can you tell? Am I a nerd or am I a nerd? They were all just stunned. No, that is, Juliet, I appreciate that very much. We've got exactly 5 minutes. This is what I'd like to do, a round robin. I've already shared a little bit about my learning to read and write and really reading with the public school programs that I did and the contest. Juliet, you mentioned a little about your dad, but tell us another little story. Just a little anecdote about growing up, something about you in education. And then I'm going to ask Ramiro and Christian, and we'll close it up.
So my mother, she was only able to probably attend a level of elementary school when she was in Mexico. My father, on the other hand, went to a trade vocational school and then went to the Argentine Navy and became a marine engineer. They both said, work hard, study, and you can be anything you want to be. And I know that they truly believe that. And they gave me the opportunity to have a blessing to have books in our home. My sister was always a gifted and talented artist. They always encouraged her to draw, and they supported her art. So when children are all unique. They all have a diverse array of talents and skills and passion. Cultivate that passion. That will keep them engaged and involved in their education. Lifelong learning happens when you love what you do. And if you're able to find something that you're passionate about, you will strive to work hard to perfect that craft, and you will be a tremendous success. And so if you do what you love, what they say, you never work a day in your life.
No, that's incredible. And as we turn to Ramiro, what's amazing is I just learned something about you and your family, specifically your mom. We all have situations where most of us have more education, at least maybe for one parent, than that particular parent. And the reality is you're also a lawyer. Yeah. So the reality is that it doesn't need to be that the person advocating for education has to know all the answers. No. They just have to be able to open a window and advocate for exposure. Ramiro?
Well, I'm a farm boy, and so I'm the oldest of 7. So growing up on the farm, working summers, hot summers, out in the fields with my dad, every day coming home from school, same thing, out in the field, I just hated that. So my dad always said, si quieres trabajar como un burro como yo, vale más que no quieres trabajar como un burro como yo, tienes que ir a la escuela, a la universidad. So those were his words. My dad, though he was born here in the U.S., he never learned to speak English because he always had to work side by side, by his dad's side, by his grandfather's side, working the farmland. But he was a very smart man. He knew that education was a way to get out of there and do better for yourself. So my mom, her education not beyond the 3rd grade, she taught us the English at home before we started first grade. So I owe where I am today to my dad, the smartest man ever lived.
No, that's incredible. And knowing that you also remembered and you yourself pursued, as you said earlier, that you got your master's in your 50s. So that the fact that we just continue. That's an absolutely beautiful statement. You know what, Christian? I think that we will give you the penultimate word before I turn it and thank the mayor of this great city. But tell us one final anecdote about your mom on education.
My mom on education. I'm envisioning right now looking at the television, but here's where I'm going. That television is surrounded by books that my mother purchased and purchased and purchased for me over and over. And it was just, I was surrounded by these books. Now, I won't say that I took every opportunity to read every one of those books, but let's jump a few decades later. And I'm looking at the screen, I'm watching a television show, and it's about John Lewis, and he's receiving an award. And he's receiving an award for a graphic novel. And so maybe a book full of letters isn't for everyone. Maybe you need some pictures in there, a graphic novel. But in the words of John Lewis, read, read, read. You just always read, because that will open up the opportunities for you unlike any other activity there is.
Okay, I have to tell you, and we're all at 1 minute, quickly, the mural with the young girl. Talk about that. That just was that was just what's the appropriate word? That we just had the luxury of seeing unveiled.
It's a mural at Yolanda Black Navarro Middle School, and there's Latina icons.
Yes.
But in the middle is a young lady reading a book.
Absolutely. And all right, since we're having to wrap up, let's go back to where we started about the pandemic and the crisis. But I love this quotation, and it is not mine, but I looked it up. Crises are like adrenaline for innovation, causing barriers that once took years to overcome to evaporate in a matter of days. All of the telemedicine, teleopportunity, teleeducation. Let us innovate for education in our communities. Going back to where we started, Houston is the single most ethnically and culturally diverse city in our country. As our Honorable Sylvester Turner, mayor of our beloved city of Houston, advocates, diversity is descriptive, but I like this. Inclusion is intentional. Diversity is descriptive, but inclusion is intentional. And my goal, my hope is all of us here, all of us listening to us, get in the table, sit at the table, be included, whether you're invited or not. Make a little space. Hincha, no te preocupes. Entra solamente. And here's to our Hispanic community, included at the education table, because that really is the table of opportunity. Con fuerza, energía, siempre aprendiendo. Muchísimas gracias. Un honor y un placer. Buenas noches. Thank you. You return to your native tongue.